Good morning, good afternoon to everybody, wherever you're joining from today. Um, so we're going to talk about this topic of confidence, right? And we're going to look at it through the lens of being an introvert. And I was just sharing with Christina there before we came on that on Monday morning I woke up to an email with a link to this event being shared in the Metro paper in the UK as one of the top 5 virtual events for this week. And I said to Christine that my imposter syndrome kicked in, and if you're not familiar with imposter syndrome, it's kind of where you feel like, oh my God, I don't belong, I don't know enough, I'm not, so my own confidence took a little bit of a hit this week. So, and I share that, I suppose, to just um, get across the point that confidence is something that can be up and down. So it's not a case that you'll build your confidence, you tick that box, and you're confident forever. It's a feeling. It's always going to be something that's a little bit up and down. And then what I'll do is I'll share throughout the presentation as well how, if you kind of experience something like that where you feel like your confidence is a little bit low, how you can kind of talk yourself through it as well. So what we're going to do first of all is we're going to start thinking about some questions around confidence, and certainly feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat. Christina is going to help me manage that as well, and we will have time for Q&A at the end as well. So we're going to look at everything through the lens of being an introvert. I'm an introvert. I'm an introvert in business, and I suppose it's through learning about my own personality type that I've gone on this journey of trying to build my own confidence. And so hopefully it will be empowering and informative to you as well. And as I say, feel free to share as well in the chat. So if I could ask you to just start thinking, and you can again feel free to share this in the chat. What is confidence? How do you define it? It's a word that we use. We say, I feel confident or I don't feel confident. But do we actually think about what it is, what it's made up of, or how we build it? Have a think about whether you think confidence is born. Are we born with a certain level of confidence? Or is it something we build over time? Or is it maybe a little bit of both? And I'll share a research study about that as well. How do you maintain your level of confidence as you go through life, and I suppose the ups and downs of life, and how do you try to kind of retain some sort of inner balance that keeps you confident? I was at an event a few years ago, and a presenter said, and she said, confidence can be built. And it was at a time in my life where I was finishing up one business, I was starting another business, and my confidence was probably feeling a little bit low. So I was really excited to learn more in terms of how do you build your confidence. And I want to know, do you build it from kind of an outside in approach, or do you build it from an inside out? So if you're building it from outside in, you're maybe doing things like you're kind of feel the fear and do it anyway. So you might do crazy stunts like bungee jumping, or, I've read about people lying down in the ground in a train station to have people walk over you. So you get over fear of judgment, you get over fear of what other people think about you. Um, Susan Jeffers, if any of you have read her book, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway, she would say the only thing that we're afraid of is that we can't handle it. And so if you face these fears and get through it, then it builds your confidence. So I suppose that's the kind of outside in approach. What we're going to look at a little bit more today is the inside out approach. So trying to build our confidence internally. So we look at 4 different areas, and the first thing we look at is what is confidence. So that's back to that question that I asked you. Is it something? Are we born with a certain level of confidence? Now, I spent 10 years working in the early years education sector, and it's really interesting to watch children, because you can see some children, they seem to be naturally more confident than other children. And I always wondered, is it the nature, or is it nurture? Is it their upbringing at home, or are some children just born more confident? So there was a research study about 20 years ago done in the UK on 15,000 sets of twins. And what they looked at was they did an IQ test at age 7 and age 9. But what they also assessed was how successful the children thought they would be in the test, right? So what was their perceived level of success, of achievement? And what they found was the more that the children thought they would be successful, the more they were successful. So it kind of, I suppose, brings up another question for us. Which comes first, confidence or success? And it's a little bit of a chicken and an egg situation. Do you become successful because you're confident, or do you become confident because of your success? So you can reflect on that as we go through the presentation. What this particular researcher found was that in the identical sets of twins, there was a lot of similarity in terms of how successful they thought they would be in the test versus the fraternal twins. So they divided them up into identical and fraternal, and the identical sets of twins had similar levels of, we'll call it confidence, in terms of how they would do on the test. So what that researcher decided was that there was a link between confidence and genes. And so he said that up to 50% of our confidence comes from genes. Now, other researchers would dispute this, but if we accept maybe we have a little bit of confidence naturally coming to us, so whether it's 25% or up to 50%, but it still means there's a huge amount for us to work with. So confidence is absolutely something that we can build, and it is a skill, and it's something that we can work on all the time. And that's what we'll try and do today. So the second thing then we look at is the kind of the introvert experience. And a huge part of confidence is our self-beliefs. And as introverts in a quite an extroverted world, we can often be more likely to struggle with confidence. And our self-belief can take a hit because we have to compare ourselves to extroverts. And I suppose this outward, outgoing, maybe charismatic personality, right? And we can compare ourselves to that, and often feel less confident than maybe somebody who seems outwardly more confident. So we'll talk about that. I'll just share a little bit about my own journey and my own strategies that I've used in order to build my confidence. And then the final thing is to give you a tool to take away with you, which is called the sailboat metaphor. And it's really a strengths-based approach for you to help build your own confidence based on your strengths. So this is Lady Gaga, and somebody who has been extremely successful in her career, achieved massive career success, and yet she openly struggles with her confidence. So if we look at the question, what is confidence, first of all? So she says, I'm confident in who I am. I've come to a place in my life where I've accepted things that are me. So a huge part of confidence is self-belief in yourself. And we can see somebody here who has achieved this amazing success, and yet it's always up and down for her. And there's loads of other celebrities. I came across quotes from Jennifer Lopez, from Beyonce, from Emma Watson, people who have achieved amazing success. So it goes back to our other question: which comes first, confidence or success? And these people have achieved this success, and yet still their confidence can suffer. So it looks like we have to dig a little bit deeper, maybe, to achieve this level of confidence. So I want to share with you the iceberg metaphor. And it was another coach said to me at one point, she said, Aoife, you're comparing your insides with her outsides. So I was comparing myself to somebody that I thought was much more successful. And yet internally myself, I was feeling low in confidence. And the iceberg is a great metaphor for this, because what we see on the tip of the surface, whether it's somebody who's very outgoing, who speaks very confidently, who comes across as very confident, that's just what we're seeing on the surface. We've no idea what's going on beneath the surface. And in order for us to develop our own confidence, we need to understand what's beneath the surface. So we've got self-beliefs, we've got values, and we've got our thoughts. They say if you change your thoughts, you can change your life. As introverts, we've huge internal chatter going on. I'll explain briefly in a minute kind of the main differences between introverts and extroverts, but one of the ways is how we process our information. So we've got these intricate neural pathways in our brain. That means we have a tendency to overanalyze things, to be self-critical, to be self-judgmental of ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves. I've had clients say to me, I don't need anybody else to tell me what I'm doing wrong, because I'm really good at doing that myself. So that might resonate with you as well. So these self-beliefs that are below the surface, it's really, really important for everybody, but today we're looking at it through the lens of being an introvert. It's really important to address what are your self-beliefs about yourself? What are the stories that you're telling yourself? I had a client I was working with who had decided that she was a really poor doing interviews. And that was all from doing a bad interview about 15 years ago. So, what are the stories that you're telling yourself that are impacting your confidence today? And the second thing then is those thoughts, right? Controlling those thoughts, controlling that negative self-talk, and values. As introverts, we're really purposeful people, right? We need to understand our why in what we're doing, and we need to understand the value and the purpose in what we're doing. Um, when I mentioned the story there about the imposter syndrome when it kicked in for me today, but one of the ways that I had to get around that was to say that, if anything I say today is of value to somebody, then it's worth my while doing it. And I kind of, I suppose, to get over imposter syndrome, you sort of take the emphasis away from you and more on the purpose of what you're doing, and just going out there and just trying to do it. So this is just an interesting story from 1968. There was an elementary school teacher wanted to teach the children in her classroom about racism, and it was the morning after Martin Luther King had been killed. And she decided she didn't want to make the experiment about skin color, but she decided to divide the children up into blue-eyed children and into brown-eyed children. And what she did was she started to treat the blue-eyed children differently. And what happened over time is that they actually started to act differently. So when we hear something often enough, we have a tendency to start to believe it. So as introverts working in a very extroverted world, you may have grown up and you may have experienced people saying, why are you so serious? Why don't you speak up? Why don't you come out more often? Why don't you show up at work? Why don't you speak up at a meeting? All these things. And I suppose it can make us feel that our personality type is an inferior personality type. In webinars that I've done this year, I always ask that poll question, and about 90% of the participants agree that introversion is perceived as a negative personality type. There are scientific studies that have been done that have similar results as well, like 82% in one particular study agreed that introversion was viewed as a negative personality type. We have statistics that say only 2% of senior leadership are introverted, and 98% are extroverted. So we're sort of associating maybe success and leadership with a more extroverted personality. So as introverts, you can reflect on whether, your own self-belief has taken a hit in feeling like you have to change. There's words like failed extrovert, or, people feel like there's something wrong with them. I hear that all the time. I came across a good quote from Emma Watson from the Harry Potter movies, and she said, I felt something was wrong with me. And then when I understood my introvert personality, it was really, really empowering. Um, and just very briefly, in terms of differences between introverts and extroverts, so there are biological differences between us. So the introvert personality is different to the extrovert personality. There's nothing wrong with us. We are biologically made different in terms of how we process information. I mentioned those neural pathways. And anything that we take in, it goes through long-term memory, it goes through planning functions. It's why we're slower to make decisions. It's why we need time to process information. And then the second difference is how we manage our energy. So for introverts, downtime is not just nice, it's an absolute necessity. We are more sensitive to the neurochemical dopamine, and we need to have time to balance our energy levels. We need to have time to switch off, and we need to have time to process. So many people feel like if they can't keep up with the extroverted way of doing things, that there's something wrong with them. And I share all of this kind of, I suppose, as a context and setting the scene to understand how it might be affecting your self-beliefs about yourself and how it might be affecting your thoughts. Because once you understand that, I hope it's empowering, and that you can start to then take control, right? You've got that awareness now that you can start to take control. So as part of my own journey, I suppose I mentioned that, I had been at this particular event about 3 years ago, and the coach who was presenting that day, she said confidence could be built. And I had been running my own business for 10 years, and I suppose came across a lot of challenges in terms of leadership and conflict and business development and sales and all of this that you have to do when you're running a business. And I had been very entrepreneurial my whole life, but I was starting to feel like I didn't have what it took. So my confidence was kind of low at that point. So when she said, confidence could be built, I really wanted to learn more. So the first thing that I did was, which as I mentioned was very empowering, was to learn about my introvert personality. So I'd encourage you, go out. There's loads of books on introversion, and there's loads of talks, and you can certainly reach out to me to learn more as well. But when you understand your personality, it gives you back control, right? And control is very important for everybody, and it's very important for introverts. The second thing is to understand your values and what's important to you. And if you remember going back to the iceberg metaphor, below that, the values and your purpose in the work that you're doing. And that helps you kind of get over, I suppose, the ego and kind of making it about ourselves, and just focusing on what you have to offer and you have to bring to the world. The third thing was my relationship with failure. So I wouldn't have described myself as suffering from anxiety, but what I learned was control, which many introverts like to do, is actually a form of anxiety. When you're always trying to control the outcome, when you're maybe not putting yourself into situations where you don't know what's going to happen because you're trying to control it, and you say, well, I don't think I can do that, so I'm not going to try. Um, I had to change my relationship with failure, and I had to be willing to step out of my comfort zone, to try new things, um, and to be willing to fail. And I have a quote about failure from George Bernard Shaw as well at the end. And there's a really good book by Matthew Syed called Black Box Thinking, and he talks about why the airline industry is why it's safest to fly on a plane these days, if we ever get to go anywhere again, um, because after every accident that happened, every airline accident, they analyze the black box. They look and see what went wrong, and they learn. They weren't afraid of failure. They learn from the mistakes that they've done. And I try to apply that to my own life. I try to just say, step up and I'll do it, and make small changes and take small steps. But it was letting go of my perfectionist tendencies, which was huge for me. And in a way, forgiving yourself and letting, like I mentioned, we're very judgmental on ourselves. We're very hard on ourselves. We've got all this a lot of busyness. I think I have a quote at the end from Stephen Hawking's as well. Quiet people have the loudest minds. And it's so true. We have so much going on processing internally in our heads that we are very, very hard on ourselves. So being kind to yourself, and not to be too corny, but kind of loving yourself as well, and being good to yourself. Um, Comfort zones is a whole area as well, and I've spoken about that on other podcasts and webinars. And I suppose for me, it's not about, and I think generally for introverts, it's not about stretching yourself into the kind of fear or panic zone. I think we need a little bit of a more gentler approach to moving out of our comfort zones and taking smaller steps, and seeing the purpose in what we're doing. Like, why, if you have to do a presentation or you have to do something that you're thinking, I don't feel confident about this at all. Why are you doing it? What's your why? And then the last thing is, manage your own progress, right? If celebrate the small wins. So if you take little steps, and it could be like making a phone call when you'd rather have just sent an email, because we prefer to do that, or signing up to attend an event today, or signing up to do something. Celebrate those small wins, and whether it's kind of making a little wall of accomplishment for yourselves, maybe you stick up positive feedback from clients or colleagues, or a nice email that you got, or something like that. Um, there's another book by Thea Orzo, and she says, have a smile file. And it's just a little file that, you can open and say, I did this, and I did these nice things, and celebrate those small wins for yourself. Okay, so this is back to the kind of outside in sort of approach. Sometimes we need to kind of build our confidence, maybe for a meeting, maybe for a job interview, maybe to do a presentation or webinar like this. And this is from the work by Amy Cuddy, and she talks about high power poses. So you see the top row there, and they're kind of, I suppose, open stances, hands on the hip, and sitting back. They're kind of the powerful poses. And what she found was, when you take on those poses, it increases your level of testosterone. So you actually just start to feel more powerful. The lower poses, we might have a tendency, if we're not feeling confident, that we're kind of in ourselves. So just certainly watching your body language, watching your presence. But I would suggest that these poses, doing these things are kind of temporary. You have to work on the inside out approach before being able to develop sort of longer term confidence. There's been some links to optimism and confidence. So whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty kind of person, if you're a glass half full kind of person, you're probably quite likely to feel more confident about things. And there's been lots of links between optimism and our mental health. So when we feel more optimistic, and when we think about everything going on in the world right now and people's mental health, and it's a very challenging time worldwide, if we can feel hopeful and we can feel optimistic, we can feel more confident maybe about moving forward with things in our lives. Whereas, if we're feeling quite negative about it, we might be feeling, well, there's no point. So trying to get yourself into an optimistic frame of mind, smile. We talked about body language there. Smiling is very important, and to actually help you feel a little bit more optimistic and confident as well. So this is from the work by Dr. Harry Barry, and he's actually written a book on self-esteem. And he says that if we believe as individuals that our worth as a human being can be measured or valued, then trouble beckons. So, he would say self-esteem shouldn't even exist, because when we're measuring our self-esteem, we're rating ourselves, we're valuing ourselves, and we're comparing ourselves really to other people. And so we need to very much I suppose, again, back to focusing on your purpose and your why and what you're all about and what you can offer the world, rather than comparing yourself against anybody else. And then just accepting that we're all human, and forgiving yourself, and moving on, and trying the next thing. And your confidence can take a hit when things don't go wrong, but just picking yourself back up and just trying again, and accepting that's why we're all here. We're all learning, we're all here. It's this growth mindset, right? And you probably heard that term, the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. So with the fixed mindset, you feel that you're just born with certain maybe levels of confidence, skills, talent, and that's it, and it's fixed. Whereas the growth mindset is a learning mindset, that we're all here to learn, we're all here to grow, and that is our purpose in life. And that means we're going to make mistakes. So if you have a growth mindset, it means you are taking on new things, you are trying new things, and you are going to make mistakes and you're going to fail, and that's fine. You learn from it. Our greatest learnings are from our mistakes. So the last kind of tool that I want to give you to take away is the sailboat metaphor. And this is from positive psychology. And really what it's saying is that if you can visualize your life, or it can be your career or whatever it is, as a sailboat, and you are the captain of the sailboat. So no one else has control over change in your life, only you. And as the captain, you have to be the one to take the changes, or to make the changes. Um, and in this metaphor, so if you visualize your life or career as a sailboat, you can go through all the different domains, and you can imagine the water that your sailboat is in right now, and what's going on for you in your life. Maybe it's a very stressful time right now. Maybe you've lost a job. Maybe you're trying to figure out what you're going to do next, and what's going on. So that's kind of your life domain, and what's important to you, I suppose. If we go on to number two, then the compass, your feelings. Your feelings are a great indicator of what's going on for you, and it is good to really not try to suppress feelings, and be aware of them. And so if you are feeling stressed, if you are feeling nervous, if you're try to tune into to what might be causing that, and being very aware of that. The steering wheel of your sailboat are your values. That's the direction. And if this is a time of change for you and you're trying to figure out what to do, then tune into your values, tune into what's important to you. And values are actually quite hard to kind of to narrow down, and many organizations write out their values, or they have them on a wall, but to actually live your values is quite difficult. So if you want to try and figure out what your values are, um, just look at your day to day and look at what's important to you. And it can be things like fairness, or justice, or family, or punctuality, or it can be any of these things. So what's important to you every day? They're usually your values. The leak in your boat are your weaknesses. And if you focus all of your energies on your weaknesses, you'll stop the leak in your boat, you'll stop your boat sinking, but you won't actually get your boat anywhere. So what you need to do is you need to focus on your sails, your strengths. That's what's going to give your boat direction. That's what's going to move you forward. And that's why for introverts, recognizing our strengths and harnessing our strengths is really, really important. Um, they say, 66% of people don't know their strengths. And I think as introverts, because we're naturally so humble and we don't recognize our accomplishments enough, that we don't see our strengths, and introverts have a huge amount of innate strengths, and we need to draw on those, and we need to recognize them ourselves, and we need to use more of them. So if I gave you one little piece of homework from today, it would be to maybe go away and see, can you write out all of your strengths, and can you figure out how you can use them in your life more? um, and I coach people who are running businesses and working in sales and different things. And I often find that they're trying to do things which they feel other people do and which they should be doing, rather than doing what they actually love to do. And when you love to do, you're much more likely to do it well, and you're much more likely to do it more often. The other part of your boat there is the weather and what's going on, and we're probably all in fairly rough waters at the moment. Um, but draw on the other boats. Draw on your network, your family, your friends, your colleagues. Get support from other people, from coaches, and even attending webinars like this. Like, get support from wherever you can to learn all the time. And then the final thing is your destination. Where do you want to go? Why is it that you're trying to build up your confidence? Is it to feel better? Is it to take on new challenges? Is it just for day-to-day living? Like, what is it that you're hoping to do when you build up your confidence? Over on the other side, we have the four components that influence the captain. And these are so important because you can look at all the aspects of your sailboat, but you as the captain, and I mentioned your thoughts, right? If you go back to the iceberg metaphor, your daily and mental thoughts and what you're thinking about yourself are influencing all of the other components of your sailboat. They're influencing your confidence. Your action, what actions are you taking? So if you want to build your confidence, are you actually taking some steps to try new things, to step gently outside of your comfort zone? How much attention and focus are you putting on this? So if you make this your goal, like we looked at number 8 here, your goal, if you make this your goal to actually build your confidence, what attention and what motivation, why is it that you want to do it? Okay, so visualizing the sailboat for your life or your career, looking at where you want to go, why you want to do it, what are your strengths, and how are you going to get there, and how, as you as the captain, are you going to get there? So hopefully that's a little tool. And I know Christine is going to email this to everybody as well after the event. And so you'll be able to, and you can just kind of maybe draw a line from each of the different components and write out how it applies to you. So just to kind of summarize there as we finish up, we can build confidence certainly from the outside in. We can take on things like bungee jump or whatever, feeling or fear. But really, to create sustainable levels of confidence, we have to build it from the inside out. We have to, there's a funny comment from Brené Brown, if you've read any of her books on vulnerability. And she said she went to a therapist and she said, I've got 90 minutes, fix me and tell me in 90 minutes. And the therapist, of course, just laughed at her because it's a much harder process than that. So, and certainly for confidence building, it's going to be a much harder process, and it's going to be a slow process. But, you start the work in terms of self-belief and values and your thoughts. Ebbs and flows. It's going to go up and down. You're going to feel more confident doing certain things than other things. Try to create a life for yourself where you're doing things where you feel confident. And part of that comes from trying new things. If you'd asked me probably 2 years ago to do a webinar like this, I don't know would I've had the confidence to do it. But it's through practice, and it's through trying different things and just putting yourself out there that you can learn to develop these levels of confidence. Recognize, if you are an introvert, that we are in an extroverted world. And I believe we do have some additional challenges in terms of self-beliefs, in terms of perception of our personality and lack of understanding around our personality type too. And understand the biology, I suppose, of what it means to be an introvert, and give yourself credit for that. Then recognize your introvert strengths, and that's your homework for you to take away today, to try to see, could you make a list of your introvert strengths and look at things that you do naturally and that you do well, and document them and add them to that smile file that I mentioned as well. You are the captain of your sailboat. Nobody else can increase your confidence, only you. You have to take responsibility for your thoughts, for your attention, for your motivations, and the focus, and look at how you can, I suppose, take control of doing that. One small thing. See if you can gently move yourself out of your comfort zone to expand your comfort zone. If you're familiar with those circles, the comfort zone in the middle where we feel really comfortable doing things, can you do one small thing? And like I said, it might be just picking up a phone instead of sending an email or whatever it is, um, and document that in your smile file. And the final thing, just establish presence. And that doesn't mean that we have to be the outgoing, charismatic personality that might not come naturally to you. You might have a quieter, more serious personality. But in some way, when you come into your own, when you develop that quiet inner strength and that quiet inner confidence, you'll actually develop that presence for yourself. And when you develop that presence, others will feel that confidence as well, not just you. So this is the quote there that I just mentioned from George Bernard Shaw. A life, oh, sorry, when I skipped ahead. A life spent making mistakes is not only honorable, but more useful than a life. My screen sharing sign is over, but I think than a life doing nothing, I think is what he says, George Bernard Shaw. So it's really about, I suppose, stepping up, taking a chance, and if you make a mistake, that's absolutely fine as well. And quiet people have the loudest minds. So they're my contact details. Feel free to connect in with me on social media. I always love to hear people's feedback and your own experience of building confidence. And I'm going to hand it back over to Christina, and then we have a few minutes for Q&A if anybody has any questions.